Men who became friends with benefits or hooked up with their female friends. How did it start? Story 1, alcohol. Grinding. She asked if I wanted oral sex. I returned the favor, but alcohol for sure opened that door. Story 2, met her through friends of a friend I made in university. She was one of the sane ones to chat with at parties but didn't think much beyond that. We got drunk at a housewarming cocktail party, and she invited me back to her place. We decided to keep it going as friends with benefits. It didn't work as planned, and we moved in together 4 months later. It will be 30 years this June. Story 3, we were left alone together and talking about our dating experiences. One of us asked, "Did you ever think about asking me out?" Then compliments were exchanged, and that was that. Story 4, I don't know. We had been completely platonic friends for several years. Then one day when I was leaving her house, we kissed. I freaked out a lot. I didn't know what had happened. Apparently, she was confused too. A couple of months later, she came to see me. I was living out of state. I assumed it was a completely platonic visit. We had talked about her visiting me for a while. She was a travel agent and I lived near a lot of tourist destinations. I didn't think anything of it. It was going to be cool to have a friend visit me. That night at her hotel, she invited me to stay. We spent the entire weekend together. At the end of the weekend, I took her to the airport and put her on a plane. I waved goodbye and figured I would never see her again. We had completely ruined our relationship, especially since I wasn't going to see her again for months. I came home and we picked up where we left off. I basically moved in with her. Long story short, we got married a year later. Story 5. Friendly flirting turned from a joke to something more serious. We slept together once. She knew I was not looking for a relationship, and she was fine with it. She asked if I would like to be friends with benefits, and it was fine for the few months we were together. She even introduced me to some of her friends. Story 6. We were friends for a while. We ran around in the same group for 4 to 5 years, but both of us were in long-term relationships most of that time. We became single around the same time toward the end of college. We stayed in the same town where our college was over the summer and started hanging out one-on-one. Then we went to the bar. I had a little too much to drink to drive home. She told me I could crash on her couch if needed. At her house, she said she was going to grab something while I was getting ready to crash on the couch. She asked if I wanted to join her in her bed. She looked very good, and my instinct took over. It lasted a few months until I finally ran out of money and had to move. I asked to take it further and try long distance. We tried, but it didn't work. We are not friends anymore for other reasons. If I had any recommendation, it would be to date your friends' friends, not your friends. In my experience, attractive girls are usually friends with attractive girls. Also, when it inevitably ends, it complicates things. You either get married or you are not friends anymore. Story 7. Giving her a ride home, we were talking about how we were glad we were becoming friends. She said something along the lines of, "What kind of friends are we?" She had been longtime friends with my sister, but we had started to hang out more and more at that time. I responded with, "Friends with benefits?" And it started from there. Story 8. Always with alcohol. Generally, they were women I worked with. We would get drunk at work events and have sex. Story 9. She was always around my freshman college dorm because her close friends lived in the same dormitory. We would all hang out casually. We were both seeing people exclusively at the time, but those relationships did not work out. We were in the same major, took similar classes, and started casually hooking up. Story 10. I used to hang out at her place when I was bored, and she just kissed me one day. She was probably giving me many hints, and I missed every single one. Others were pretty straightforward, like a text saying, "Come over," etc. Story 11. It always starts with alcohol. Most of the time, funny enough, the girl made the first move on me. The one time I made the first move, we dated for 6 years. If you are looking for advice on how to start, you have to be respectfully bold. It starts with a kiss. Story 12. We went to a party, danced, drank, and she kissed me. This was always preceded by some flirting and mischievous looks and comments. Story 13. She was going through some difficulties with her ex-boyfriend. She came on to me, we had sex, and it ended our friendship because it was our first time and we were young and inexperienced. Story 14. I knew her from high school and hung out once again in our 20s. She asked me directly if I wanted to be friends with benefits. I did not say no. Story 15. I drunkenly sent my sister's best friend a text one night stating that I had always wanted to see her breasts. There was tension between us for a long time. We both found ourselves single at the same time, and drunk me is both braver and dumber than sober me. Sober me turned out to be the lucky one. Story 16. I was going through a divorce. She came over to hang out and sat very close to me. At one point, I grabbed her and put her in my lap, and the rest just kind of happened. Story 17. We had both recently gone through breakups and reconnected. We had hung out several times before this as friends, but one thing led to another, and it happened. There was always an unspoken chemistry between us, to be honest. It was more of a when situation than an if. Story 18. Started out with alcohol. To this day, she claims that when she invited me over, she had no intention of anything happening. But she found me attractive, and we were alone together at night at her place while feeling loosened up by the alcohol. We didn't hook up again for 3 years. At this point, it was normal for me to come over at night, drink, and hang out without it turning to sex. She let me crash on the couch because I had too much to drive. As she said goodnight, she kissed me. I didn't make a move, and she went to bed. When she woke up, she noticed on her way out of the bathroom that I was awake. She climbed on top of me and went for it. Another 7 months passed. She got really horny and was recently single. She called me and I was over there in record time. I'm able to hook up and think nothing of it afterward. We were still just friends. But it became clear that she couldn't rationalize it the same way. Every time we hooked up, a part of our friendship crumbled. So we agreed to just leave it as a fantasy, purely platonic friendship from now on. I know that she still thinks about it. She has told me as much. I do too. But my friendship with her means more than that. I suppose there are other girls who fit the question, but with those girls, there was always some sexual tension that wasn't initially acted upon for various reasons. Story 19. This is my friend's story. He reconnected with a female friend from his high school. He had a girlfriend at the time and admitted he reconnected with that girl just because she looked attractive. He was always playful and had a casual dating persona, I guess. After he broke up with his girlfriend, he used to send nudes, I'm horny texts as a joke, and she would just tell him to be quiet. But one day she actually sent the nudes. Then they started chatting. I guess that worked because the girl started to develop feelings for him. He ended things when he realized that. Story 20. For me, they have always gone there from day one. I say something along the lines of, I am not looking for a relationship. If you still want to hang out, we can, but that is up to you. Girls who are my actual friends, I do not touch. Story 21. I have found that having a friends with benefits relationship with an actual friend complicates things. Emotions, attachments, and the friendship itself come under pressure. Having a friends with benefits situation with someone in your friend circle, but you are not very close or hanging out much, usually only to be with mutual friends and then hook up afterwards, has always worked better for me. There is a clearer understanding that you both think each other are cool but are not trying to take the situation any further than it is, and that the emotional distance or lack of significant connection is mutual. Story 22. We were friends through her boyfriend, but they broke up when he became abusive. Our friend group kicked him out and welcomed her in. We went to a bar for an engagement party, and the two of us were some of the only single people. We stuck together that whole night, and when I offered her a ride home, she invited me inside. We hooked up that whole summer and then ended things when she moved for work. Story 23. Familiarity and comfort with someone can lead to attraction or curiosity, potentially developing into something non-platonic if the timing is right, often with alcohol involved. A friend's ex was still around, repeatedly saying he was done with her. She kept rubbing up against me, and I avoided anything beyond a hug for months until he told me to go for it. She's fun, But I don't need her drama in my life. She was only difficult when heavily intoxicated and around him. At other times, she was amazing. I honestly felt she was almost perfect for me. The main problem was that they still had emotional ties to each other. In hindsight, she was emotionally immature, and he enjoyed toying with people. They never got far enough apart. Eventually, it turned into a three-person relationship. She kept avoiding choosing between us, so it was friends with benefits on her end while I was absolutely in love with her. Then she found another friend and thought he was great. She left everyone for him. He abused her. Later, she returned to the original guy, cut me out completely, acted as if we had no relationship, and I lost all those friends to preserve my sanity. They are married now, and I am confident she is unfaithful to him just as she was before with me. Story 24. This happened to me with a group of female friends. When there was mutual attraction to begin with, I would openly admit to it and drop the occasional innuendo. But I always made sure that I was not being intrusive or annoying about it. No pressure on them at all, just the occasional friendly flirt and laugh. If they responded to it, which most of them did, it would continue and eventually lead to something. I was not a friend to them because I wanted to get into their pants. They always saw me as a genuinely good, reliable friend with boundaries. I was not someone to command around or call up on a whim. Over time, when the stars aligned, it would just happen naturally. It was almost always the women who made the actual move, like those unending close hugs, the soft headbutts while out drinking, or grabbing my hand and putting it on their waist. I see this as something other than pure momentary lust. Instead, it was a sign that they felt very comfortable around me, and in that moment it felt right and they trusted me. We would just go from there, and because we were already so close, they kept coming back. Story 25. Hung out with a coworker a couple of times. We hit it off and clicked really well. Just wholesome, good times. One night started out really friendly as usual. I picked her up from work. We went to Johnny Rockets and got burgers and shakes. We were having fun and walking around window shopping. We went back to hang out in my car. We got to talking about my move. When a girl asks you what your move is, she's asking you to make a move. I told her I had to park in a secluded spot and I'd show her. I showed her. We had sex in my car. She was slightly embarrassed after and wanted to go home. She sent me a video of herself. The fling lasted about a month. Story 26. Slept with them, let them know I was not looking for anything serious, and left it to them to call me back. Story 27. Alcohol. It has happened a few times. The first time was with my best friend in college. We spent all our time together, but I never considered her that way. Then one day we got drunk in my bedroom. She stuck out her tongue at me, and I jokingly went to bite it. Before I knew it, we were kissing and ended up in a relationship. A few years later, I had a close work friend. We spent all our free time together at work and socializing after hours. I was in a relationship when we started hanging out, so it was completely innocent. Then my girlfriend and I broke up, but by then, she was also in a relationship, so nothing happened. Suddenly, we were both single. One night, she stayed at my place, and after too much champagne from a work event, we were lying on the bed. She started rubbing herself against me, and we had a casual relationship for a few months. We stopped because things were getting too serious, and neither of us wanted that. The third time, a close friend came over the day I moved into my new house for drinks. A lot of drinks. The house had a nice bathtub. She wanted to try it, so I let her. At one point, she called me in, expecting her to be covered with bubbles, but she wasn't. She asked me to bring her a drink, which I did, and we chatted. I said I wanted to try the bath too, and she invited me in. We had a casual relationship for a while. She later moved in temporarily when she had nowhere to stay, and it became more serious. We were kind of in an open relationship without a label, and that ended badly. Next, I went on a massive drinking binge with a friend. I didn't see this coming. We stayed in a hotel room, lying in bed, when she pushed herself against me, probably innocently. I got aroused, and she noticed. Then she just grabbed me. Lastly, a friend came back to my place after a party. We were watching a film on the sofa innocently when she suddenly grabbed me. Then she took me out and put me in her mouth. I was surprised but didn't say no. By the way, I have several female friends with whom I have completely platonic relationships. I just have a lot of female friends. Of those 5, I'm still friends with 3. The ones above were close friends. I have also hooked up casually with other friends a few times. Story 28. We used to go out in a group, then alone. Usually drinks, then get a room. She insisted it was never going to go further than friends with benefits. We were intimate for years and went on secret dates. I was with her in her parents' living room, hotels, and her room. It brings back memories. Story 29. Hanging out as friends, the conversation turned to dating and how she wasn't thrilled with her options, as all her recent dates had been disappointing for one reason or another. I made a comment about how it would be nice to have someone to do physical activities with while waiting to find the right person. She agreed, and that night we went back to my place and became intimate. It was a bit awkward at first because we had hung out as friends quite a few times, but pretty soon we relaxed and it became normal. We still hung out as friends, but occasionally one of us would say, "Hey, do you want to come over tonight?" And that was the signal that we were going to be intimate. Story 30. Lady here had a flirty coworker and we would talk about sex and related topics. One day, I asked if he wanted to see a picture I was sent. I sent it because the tip was massive, the biggest I had ever seen, so I joked that the guy wanted to kill me because it was too big. He said his should be perfect then and sent his picture. A little more flirting, and then he said he wanted me. It went from there. We hook up about twice a week and it is fun for now. The secretiveness is what makes it more exciting. Story 31. We dated. One night she was upset about something. We went out to eat, and there were kids in the place being obnoxious. When we got back to her place, she screamed at me and told me to get out. Okay. At that point, I was never going to pretend this was going to be a relationship. I also assumed we were done. Then she invited me to spend time together so we would not end it with anger. She said it would be just going to lunch. Then we went back to her place. After that, we did not talk for a week or two. Kept going like that, where one of us would call the other and we would spend a day together, then not communicate for a week. We never made plans in advance. It was always plans for tonight or tomorrow. Story 32. Met at a party of a mutual friend. Built a friendship while also having a sexual relationship. For several reasons, we would never have a serious relationship, and we both understood that. No alcohol was involved, as neither of us drinks. It is possible, with the right combination of charisma, personality, and audacity, to do these things sober. Story 33. First of all, do not try this with your good friend. You may end up losing the friendship. In my case, she was interested. One day, she had neck and back pain, and I said, "Okay, let's give you a massage." Then it all started. We both have partners, and it happened only twice. Guilt built up, and we lost our friendship. Story 34. Her marriage ended when her husband decided he wanted to be a woman. She had not been intimate in a long time, so as a longtime close friend, I offered my assistance. She recently got married again. Story 35. It was a bit of a gamble. We had known each other for months beforehand as friends through Dungeons and Dragons and still actively played. I was in a relationship when we first met, but that ended a couple of months later, and I decided to take a break from seeing anyone. We built up a good rapport with jokes and dialogue. After a Dungeons and Dragons session, I drove her home. We ended up messaging each other until 1:30 a.m. Even though I had dropped her off about 2 hours earlier. We started sexting over the phone, and then she came over for a sleepover. We both weren't too sure what exactly we were, so the week after we hooked up, we went out for a date to discuss if we were both interested in seeing each other regularly and to explore our compatibility, rather than just being friends with benefits. Several weeks later, we had the conversation to become exclusive, and here we are. Story 36. I stayed at her place after a party because she lived close and I lived far away. I asked if I could receive oral sex, and I did. Story 37. Friend with benefits 1. She was a friend's ex. We hooked up at a movie night and kept having sex for a few months until she met a guy to date exclusively. Friend with benefits 2. Started with chatting and making out at a party, included oral sex, became friends because of it, having sex as time permits. Friend with benefits 3. Chatted at a party. She asked mutual friends about me and if I would be interested in hooking up. Became friends alongside the sex. Friend with benefits 4. Took partner to a party, met another couple there, and exchanged partners. Kept in touch, have sex, and build friendship simultaneously. Friend with benefits 5. Met at a convention through a mutual friend, had sex the next day, and continued from there. Kept chatting and making plans for more sex. The common thread for me is that sex is part of the relationship from the start, if not the first thing. Others where it has been friends first have mostly stayed that way, even if I have wanted more. Story 38. Generally, they thought that I was flirting with them when I was not, so they started flirting with me. Once they started flirting with me, I began actively flirting with them, and things escalated from there. Story 39. Molly, we were big ravers. We have known each other for 14 years and got married last year. Marrying your best friend is better than I ever could have hoped. Story 40. The first relationship was initiated by her. I don't remember much because it was a long time ago and lasted only a couple of months. The second relationship began after I went through a bad breakup and saw a friend who was moving back into the area. We went to an arcade, and I couldn't stop noticing her. She noticed and later texted me about it. I told her she looked really good. At first, she wasn't interested, but a couple of days later, she started talking about it. We were together for about 3 years until the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Some things happened that scared me, and I needed a way out. The pandemic provided the perfect opportunity. Story 41. We obviously liked each other more than friends. After the party, during the party, whatever. Sometimes you have to be bold and make physical contact. Story 42. I went up to her at a bar and asked if she wanted a drink. We danced and hung out the whole night after that. We texted for a month, and then she asked me to go see her. We started hooking up on the weekends. After another month, she told me she just wanted sex and nothing beyond that. We inadvertently became friends with benefits, but by this point, I actually wanted her to be my girlfriend. Nearly 3 years passed. We hardly communicate now. The friends with benefits relationship ended a long time ago, pretty much as soon as I let her know how I felt about her. The key was to not tell her how I felt, but I didn't know this at the time and unfortunately opened up to her. Since I haven't been intimate with her in a long time, I currently have no friends with benefits and want to start looking for a few, to be honest, because I no longer want a romantic relationship. I do and I don't. I want to be in love and have one special woman, but I also want to be with any woman I want, whenever I want. Honestly, preferably with her being willing to join. That is my current dilemma. I want to have my cake and eat it too. I do not wish this feeling on anyone, not even my worst enemies. Feeling this conflicted and improbable desire really sucks. Story 43. Meet them on dating apps or in person. If the vibe is right, I ask if they want to have casual sex, and if yes, I give them the talk. I am not looking for anything serious. I would like a friends with benefits type of situation. I am consistent and will follow through with meetups and expect the same. You must be fine with using a condom unless you get tested, and I will do the same. Then we can have unprotected sex. They either say they don't mind or that they are not looking for friends with benefits. In the heat of the moment, I have never had someone turn it down. Let your personality and charisma win them over and allow them to get to know you. Then let them know exactly what you want. Story 44. Became friends at work, which quickly escalated to flirting. Then there was a staff party where we were intimate in the staff room. Story 45. One of them, we had a talk about dating and wanted different things, but neither of us had anyone we were remotely interested in, so we agreed to a friends with benefits arrangement. It did not last. The longest friends with benefits relationships I have had have always been with exes. I guess I do all right in bed, or they would not be so eager. Story 46. At a party, she said, "Well, surprise me." Then we made eye contact and it went from there. She didn't want to be intimate on the first night, but the next night she called and was interested. Story 47. We were watching movies at his place like we always did every Friday. The tension had been building for weeks. When he accidentally brushed my hand reaching for the popcorn, I just went for it and kissed him. Best decision ever. We kept it casual for 8 months until he moved for work. Story 48. Went for dinner like we had before. No big deal or anything different from other times. Anyhow, been married for nearly 20 years now. Story 49. I met her through a hookup app. We had coffee with no sexual activity and then arranged a second meeting at a Nate Bargatze show. We went back to her place, and she said I had to leave when the sex was over. I just made sure it never ended. Almost 2 years later, we are married with children. Story 50. Most of the friends I have been intimate with, which have been many, always had mutual intentions. I experimented a lot with different types of relationships when I was younger and would suggest trying new experiences. Most women enjoyed the attention and no strings attached arrangement. I was fairly good looking when I was young and confident. It would start with flirting, but I always made my intentions clear when I felt it was the right time, and they would usually say yes, which worked about 90% of the time. The difficult part was when someone became emotionally attached and you were in close proximity all the time. You had to make excuses, disappear, and be out of touch enough for them to lose attachment. If desperate, you might call them for intimacy, though that rarely worked. Women are just as passionate as men about intimacy. As long as they are interested, you can build a strong connection. Story 51. We were good friends from university for years, but never did anything beyond that. One day, she came over. I made dinner for her and we sat on the couch. Eventually, we ended up cuddling, and I turned around and kissed her. Then it happened. A few months passed, and she asked if I wanted to be in a relationship. I said no. After that, she told me to go away and got back with her ex. Haven't spoken or seen her since. Story 52. We shared an apartment. We started a relationship after a few months. It lasted less than a year, and we do not speak anymore. Story 53. She always had a crush on me. She went to college, and when she came back home, she would stay at my place. I was attracted to her and drunk. We were intimate for 20 years, and not a single time did we go out together. Now she hates me, but that's okay. I never lied to her. Story 54. I knew her from years earlier at work, before Facebook. I was always in a relationship. She messaged me about 7 or 8 years later on Facebook, and we met up for drinks. She refused to let me drive from the bar, so I knew then it was going to happen. We hooked up at least twice a month for about a year. Then her friends started influencing her, and she stopped. Story 55. I have a couple of female friends with whom I have hooked up. What prevented us from ever dating was distance. They lived across the country in different places, and none of us could uproot our lives and move. We are still friends to this day and text often. When any of us has been in a relationship, the hooking up does not happen, and we respect boundaries. Story 56. It basically started with me having no idea how people get into friends with benefits situations. I remembered a friend who previously had a crush on me. I wasn't interested, but we remained friends. I wasn't under any impression she still had feelings, but knowing she found me attractive at least made her the most viable option. In addition, she once mentioned friends with benefits with other guys, but it did not work out because they always caught feelings. This made me think she was immune to that, so maybe it would not be wrong to ask her after turning her down. She accepted, and we had fun for a few months. She caught feelings again. I still didn't want a relationship, so it felt wrong to continue. Now I'm back to having no idea how people get into these situations. Story 57. First time. My fiancée was pushing for us to play with each other for a couple of years. We finally took her up on the offer. The surprise was that the friends with benefits partner was also secretly attracted to her, so threesomes were in the picture for a while. Although we had our suspicions, the fact was that she had been in the closet about her bisexuality for years. Second time. I met a friend while I was dating somebody else. She had a crush on me since we met, but she respected the relationship I was in and kept it to herself. After we broke up, she pursued me hard. Story 58. I started by gradually spending more time with her, sharing a few laughs, and building trust before things became romantic. Story 59. She came around and was always interested, but I never wanted to because I had a girlfriend. One day, I wanted to be with her and asked her to hang out. Then I made my move while we were watching movies on my bed. Story 60. I knew her as a friend with no intention of having sexual relations with her despite her attractiveness. Then, as she opened up more about herself, she found herself attracted to me. Then we became friends with benefits. Story 61. She broke up with her boyfriend and invited me to a party. It was a little awkward, but I had fun. All her friends seemed to know why I was there before I did. Story 62. Visited my friend's place for the weekend. We drank a little before heading out, and I noticed her looking at me and leaning closer on the couch. I saw the opportunity but decided not to make a move. I'm perfectly fine with being friends and didn't want to risk what advancing could do to our relationship. Story 63. We had been friends for years. There was always some tension in the air. I did not see her for a while, then ran into her one day and we chatted for some time. We went out for coffee. Since we were both available, that changed things a bit. We talked more and then she invited me over. I barely closed the door before the clothes were being removed. Story 64. I wanted to be sure I was gay. By the end of the weekend, I was certain. We had fun, but it was definitely not my taste. Story 65. In most cases, it typically starts with them liking the way you look. From there, you tell them you are not wanting anything serious and to have casual relations. Guess what? They do not care, they still want that because they like the way you look. Then you have some lonely guy who says he is ugly and hates life because he cannot get any female attention. And you have average people telling him it is his personality. Hey, I am not really looking to have a relationship like that. I just want to have casual relations. Sure. What does that guy have that the lonely guy does not have? A face that can make them melt. It has nothing to do with personality. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.